So this is kind of a depressing afternoon. We came into the office to record our season opener with an amazing lineup with some investment gurus who basically got cold feet. No, I'm just kidding. Didn't get cold feet.
I heard Bitcoin pumped too much. They were a bit upset.
They're waiting for Bitcoin to correct before they show up. So we had an investment debate set up with actually two other guests, and one of our guests that was supposed to be here actually right now unfortunately called us and told us he has COVID.
Which is just the way the world seems to be working.
Basically 2021 in a nutshell.
Yeah. Don't say that. It was 2020 in a nutshell. We don't want to...
I mean, fuck. I mean, what a... It really sucks, but it's okay. We're here.
Yeah.
They got a new setup.
Yep.
Hopefully the conversations end up being more casual.
I think so.
Because of the setup.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have something we'd like to talk about. The year started out kind of crazy. And we thought it'd make sense to talk about what just happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
Trump basically getting canceled off this season's episode of Earth.
Of reality TV.
Of reality TV,
Yeah.
Also known as the United States political system.
Yeah. But a coordinated cancel.
Facebook, oddly, was the first.
Not oddly, they've finished making money off the rights, and now they're going to switch.
Okay, so we know where you stand. So, Twitter banned Trump indefinitely.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
Facebook did at least until inauguration day.
Yeah, so silence for 2 weeks.
Instagram as well.
Yeah. Amazon have just barred Parler.
Yeah.
So that silence there.
So we wanted to talk about, does it make sense? Do you silence people? And where does the line get drawn for freedom of speech?
And I asked you this question this morning, right?
Yeah, I have a very, very clear view of what I think about it.
Yeah, because I've been going at the weekend on Twitter.
A Canadian,
What do you believe in? Do you believe in free speech? That's a good way into the conversation.
I mean, of course I believe in free speech, but not at the peril of society.
Your version of society.
Yes, my version of society.
Okay, explain.
So we've grown up privileged in a world where relative peace has existed, where prosperity has been the product of free thinking and equality or perception of equality. And so, we've grown up. I was born in 1985, but I think even a bit before that. But since I would say, 70s and 80s until today, we've lived in a world predominantly controlled by a more liberal kind of political ideology, let's call it. And so the ruling party has been, let's call it the democratic way of thinking, the Democratic Party way of thinking, not democratic way of thinking. And so that liberal view or perceived liberal view, or that leading political party that is leading that liberal view has drawn a world that you and I have been born into and have benefited from. And so that obviously has come at the cost of somebody else's view of the world. But yes, today, in my mind, freedom of speech is important, but not at the cost of losing our way of living. Right? And so be that incorrect or be that at the peril of others, in the kind of hope to preserve our way of life, then yes, I do think there are lines that can be drawn on where freedom of speech can or cannot go.
That's fair. I mean, so again, my side, my point of view here, I mean, we could debate this all day long, but so there's a few things. I'll break it down. Why now? Why cancel him after everything? his incitement and his breaching of rules and ways of speaking has been going on for years. So
yeah, but this is a turning point. This is
why? Because you overrun a Capitol building.
No, because
you can't like incite hatred to mow people down in the street like in Charlottesville and get away with it then and say that there was bad actors on both sides.
But at that point he was duly elected within his term, right? Now he's not duly. He's on his way out. He's been defeated, and the kind of stability and kind of mere kind of preservation of the democratic system of the United States was in question as he was inciting a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the Capitol building being overrun. I don't think people really care about people just going inside a building. I don't think that's what decides whether a company or a country goes into kind of like a revolution. But I think he was calling people.
He's been sure, but it's
very different.
But he's been doing that since November.
Yeah, but he wasn't doing that explicitly. He was basically putting in question the Constitution of the United States that said that there was a president-elect, and he was inciting them with false claims and asked them basically to take up arms. That's a very different,
No, I agree, but I guess my point on it is, it's interesting the timing because, and I guess it's like a snowball effect. It's a coordinated effort. But let's start with Twitter. So Twitter obviously come out and announced. The thing about Jack Dorsey is he's never sided or taken a different stance. He's been straight down the line with his perspective on the way that this has been, and he's consistently been in breach of those rules and warning after warning after warning after warning to eventually go. So that position has never changed. Facebook have flip-flopped their position, which just, again, it sums up the company as a whole from my point of view.
I mean, we spoke about that as well.
It's just
that post that Elon Musk posted that I also reshared this week, of like a company whose foundation was based on comparing women on the college campus.
Yeah.
Obviously was conceived out of kind of like evil, is in no way gonna all of a sudden transform and be good for society. Like if your starting point is crap, you're gonna end up with crap.
Yeah.
Right? Like Facebook was created to rate women.
Exactly.
Like, how is that ever going to be good for society? I don't care how you reform yourself. And I'm sorry, and I said this too, this might be really, really mean, but the first time I ever saw Mark Zuckerberg's face, I knew he was fucking evil.
Yeah, I mean.
Right? I'm like, he looks like
it's the sort of thing, like, never judge a book by its cover, but maybe in this instance.
He looked like, what's his name? What's his name?
Don't say. How far are you taking this?
Dr. Evil.
Oh, Dr. Evil. Okay, fine. Yeah.
He looked like fucking Dr. Evil.
Yeah, that's just true.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And so on that point, the Twitter CEO, founder, whatever, Jack Dorsey, was always super clear on his perspective.
Yeah.
And now Facebook's switching. Let's be clear. Realize that, oh shit, like we can't make money off of him now. We can turn it now. It's good for business. Yeah, I totally agree. But surprise, surprise, Facebook is crap.
Yeah.
Right? Like everyone's downloading Signal. Everyone wants to fucking get rid of WhatsApp now and this and that. And I think, everyone's going to get their dues in time. But I think, I'm not surprised about social media. And I don't care about social media in the sense, it is what it is. It's a tool that is there to make money. Like it's a free tool that we all use, that we're all being kind of...
it's
to the highest bidder.
Whatever the program is, but you described, like, we are the product.
Yeah.
If your product's free, then we are the product. So I completely get that. I just think, and you said it this morning, society... it's becoming clear society isn't ready for social media. We were not and the outcome of that right now is starting to happen.
Think about the power, right? Like if you can
cancel the president, you are the power.
Exactly, but think about the power of social media, right? Like if you are super rich and you are evil in today's society, it is really dangerous. You can have influence on anybody, any country, any political system, anything.
Yeah.
You don't know what's real, what's fake. You could control millions of people at your keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference with society. Like society wasn't ready for that at all. Like none of us could fathom a world where everything you consume is fake.
Mm.
It's very possible.
True.
Like I think social media is a very dangerous tool, and it's been weaponized. And now we need to be really careful.
Do you not think it's a dangerous path? The path that we're now taking. So here's the thing. Like for the longest time, I mean, like you hear of, this kind of censored internet or view of the world in China, right? And we have judged, right? There's a judgment there when it comes to Western companies, and it's just this back and forth, it's just fucking politics. But like you go back and forth on this stuff. What is different from that censorship to the censorship that is now being justified in these monstrous US companies? And for those monstrous US companies to be able to wield that power, doesn't that then scream out to the world that you probably need to start building your own platforms in your own countries that you have your own control over if that power can be wielded?
What's wrong with that?
Nothing's wrong with that. I'm just saying that this is where we're moving.
But that's the thing. Like, I don't see anything wrong with that.
But do you see something wrong with the censoring of people, or you don't see?
As a general topic, of course, there's something wrong with censoring people. But I'm just saying, as like, it's a very thin line. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's a clear line. I don't think it'll ever be clear. I don't think it should ever be clear. I think it's okay for things to go back and forth.
So how does?
I'll give you a good example.
Okay.
Like there are certain scenarios where we serve our customers with a certain mindset, and there are other scenarios where that mindset won't work. Based on the objectives that you have in your organization or group of people, you follow different approaches. If my daughter is running and she's about to step on hot burning coal, if she keeps running straight, you think I'm going to be super democratic and peaceful in how I communicate to her? Or I'm going to scream at her not to run over the coal?
I'm just picturing like.
Man,
I'm just picturing
right? like
Orange Man running towards some burning coals and
no, but you know what I mean, right? Like,
Zuckerberg and Dorsey taking him out.
But that's my point, right? Like different circumstances call for different leadership styles, right? Like we get called into companies as DUCKLIFE advisors to scream at people, to fix things, to fire people, to change structures, to implement new processes. That's not going to work with a democratic process and freedom of speech. If I take the time to listen to everyone's point of view, then nothing's going to ever get done.
But that's democracy, no?
Yeah, but democracy doesn't always work for everything.
That's true. So democracy in its current form is showing its cracks. Is basically what you're saying. Yeah. Because you can't apply it to everything.
No, but what's happening is that democracy works in circumstances where everything is a level playing field, where societies learn to live with those kind of realities that they have, right? So social media is like a wrench that was thrown into a machine. Like no one understands the power of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's like a trump card in a deck of cards, right, that everyone can use.
Yeah.
Trump card, what a great way. That's a good way to bring it back up. But basically, social media is too powerful for its society. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if you compare countries that have absolute freedom of speech and limited freedom of speech, right? And you look at how they're handling the pandemic, there are clear differences.
True.
Of those that have succeeded and those that haven't.
Yeah, those that have led and those that have had to go through the process of politics to get stuff done.
And those that don't.
This is
have
true.
Zero control. So I'm not going to sit here and say freedom of speech is, should be questioned. Absolutely not. People should fight every day for freedom of speech. But there are some things
you don't get fucking saying.
You don't allow people to have an opinion because it just slows down the process and can be more harmful than good. And look, if Trump's family name was Hitler, nobody would be talking about freedom of speech.
It's true.
Right?
So we're saying, I mean, that's an explosive comparison, but at the same time.
But if you knew for sure that person, and it was crystal clear, that person was super evil, which we are able to talk about for a guy like Hitler,
because hindsight's 2020.
Right? That's another statement. But if you knew for sure, and I mean, most people would agree to some extent that Trump is not necessarily driven by the right motivations, right? But if you knew for sure that he was a bad person, then there'd be no question and no debate about freedom of speech.
Yeah.
There's only a debate today because it is unclear and nobody knows what's true, what's false. Nobody knows what narrative is being pushed. Nobody trusts anybody. I'm not saying I trust the Democrats more than I trust the Republicans in the U.S., but I just don't trust that guy.
Yeah.
And so to take that guy off of Twitter because and really it was a turning point, man. He called people to march to the Capitol and basically have a revolution.
Yeah.
That's fucked up, man.
Yeah.
That is a difference. That's not like he didn't tell people to run over people with their cars in Charlottesville. He incited stuff. He made people believe stupidities. He said stuff that were factually true or whatever. But he did not call the nation to arms to question the constitution of their own country.
No.
Out of baseless fucking claims.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's khalas, man. Like if the guy, like his only ambition is to bring his country into chaos.
No, it's not chaos, it's power.
You know?
You gotta look at this guy as like, he's a TV reality star, right? That's all Trump is. At the end of the day, like if we really want to put it down, he,
I don't know.
Born into money, TV reality.
I don't see that way. Like he came from that, but that's not who he is. He is the president of the United States.
Nah.
And
Yeah.
he is reflective of the society that he represents.
Nah, that I agree with.
Yeah, 50% of the people voted for him.
Yeah.
I think he basically represents his constituents that voted for him, right? Like bottom line, man, half the fucking country voted for him.
Yeah, and they still have them.
75 million people voted for him.
Yeah.
I don't think he is a reality star. He's the president of the United States.
So that brings it on to another point, right? Here's where it goes from here. And the thing is, I don't disagree with anything you say, and I'm like super anti like the way that the world was like heading, especially under the narrative that that Trump was pushing. And a large part of me does agree with like turning him off. However, the consequences of that action now will be far greater moving forward, because once you turn off like 50% of a nation, where do they go? They're going to go somewhere, right? So they will move and they will transcend, and then this conversation will happen somewhere else. So now there's a divide. So that's one area that you have as a problem. The second is we're talking corporations, digital tech companies that have the power to turn off like someone like Donald Trump. Now, when you've got that much power sitting in tech companies, I don't really know where that changes under a different administration, but when it comes to the way that the world is going to shift, I'm sitting here in a Bitcoin top, right? This for me really starts to push the narrative around the decentralization of big tech in general and the way that the world works. I can see this accelerating adoption of decentralization and removing the power away from central entities. And my personal view is that's not a bad thing. But the path for that to then materialize it's going to be a tricky one.
Let's break down what you said though. So you basically, your first statement was, making the decision to dethrone Trump from the internet or from social media is setting a really weird precedent that can be very dangerous.
And it will lead to a separation of channels, which ultimately compounds the problem that we already have on the algorithms of like social and Facebook. Sure. It's an echo chamber. Sure. Now that echo chamber is going to be platform based.
Fine, that might be true, but what's also true is that if they hadn't done that, then we know for sure what would happen. It happened. It was started. Right, and so let's think about this rationally. If they didn't dethrone him, and they didn't weaken his power and ability to call people to the streets, then that route would have continued. The route of him up to the run-up of the 20th of January, and probably after that, he would have basically called his followers up to arms, right? He didn't start it. So we know where that would have taken us.
And so that risk has passed now?
No, we're not. Oh, okay. Let me finish. But we know for sure that's what would have happened.
Okay.
Right? Because it was starting time.
Yep.
Right? The other side, that might happen, or something else might happen. That's not crystal clear. But at least that route is closed.
True.
So it's still up in the air. It's still a gamble, but at least it's a gamble. It's not a sure thing. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is the way you and me are questioning social media now because of this, so is the entire fucking planet.
Yeah.
So is every government in every European country. So is every country in every South American country. Everyone is questioning now how they regulate and how they live with social media because they realize now they could be a victim to the next chop.
Exactly.
So regulation is going to be like crazy now.
Top agenda for 2021.
Every country in the world is going to fucking want to hold Twitter and Facebook by the balls.
Yeah.
Right? And so the world is very different now because of their decision, and they don't, and they know that as well.
Yeah.
And so the future of social media for me is not the same as how we think about it today. I think it's going to be very regulated. I think it's going to be extremely controlled. I think the power of social media is going to be taken away from them just because of what happened with Donald Trump. No country in the world wants to see that happen to their country.
Yep.
Right? Whether you're conservative or you're liberal, on the top of your agenda right now is Facebook doesn't fucking own me. Mm-hmm. Right? And so that's going to change. So I also think it's setting a precedent for both users and governments that neither of us, governments or people, trust them in the least bit.
Yeah.
Right? And like, for sure, this is going to be like a turning point, a pivot, and in kind of like the world of social media.
Yeah.
For sure. And so I'm not too like, I still think that what they did was the right thing, but I also think that what they did is going to hurt them long term like crazy. I mean, I hated, Mark Zuckerberg and what he stood for before, but now it's like, I saw horns, growing out of his head, literally.
Yeah.
Right? And then like Jack Dorsey, now I used to think he was like the coolest and the best of the worst, but he's just like everybody else. He's just better at PR.
Yeah. Right?
Better at how he dresses, how he positions himself, who he hangs out with. He's a bit cooler than Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah. Right? Because it doesn't look the same. But like, essentially they're all the same. So I think what happened was good for society. The outcome was a bad person is no longer in charge. Social media is in question more than it's ever been. And decentralization is at the top of everyone's fucking mind right now.
Yeah.
So on the last point, on decentralization should not just be for social media or banking or fintech. It should be for government. Right? I think we're going to start getting to a point where people vote on agendas and topics rather than people. Right? I think that sort of decentralization, we're going to start seeing it in politics in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Because
I think that has to happen.
Human nature can always be influenced. Right?
Yeah.
But I don't think people should vote for people anymore. I think for democracies to continue, you vote for agendas, themes, topics, things that your society cares about.
And we've spoken about this before.
Yes.
Literally over a year ago, actually.
Yes, I think that is the future of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because anybody can be bought.
Exactly.
Right? And so, listen, I spent most of my life in monarchies and almost half of my life in one of the most beautiful democracies, Canada. And I see the pros and cons of both of them.
Yeah.
I see a city like Dubai that was able to be built in 30 years. It is more prosperous, has better infrastructure and a better lifestyle for me and my family than Canada. That's one of the most beautiful democracies in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, freezing cold has a lot to do with it, but still. there are...
I mean, you get the trade-offs.
There are pros and cons and trade-offs of every type of society that you live in. Based on what you're looking for in your life at that time, you can argue, and debate pros and cons against many things.
Yeah.
But living in a pandemic, I'm so glad that I'm here, right?
100%.
So if this was a democratic, super open, free speech kind of place, I don't think we would have conquered, the pandemic the way we have.
No. And in my home country, that's where that the example of how weak and leadership via consensus can get you.
Because the problem is people vote on ideologies, they don't vote on topics or critical kind of issues of their society.
Yeah.
They vote on personalities. Oh, I associate more with this person's mindset. Fuck the mindset. Like, fix my tax system, fix my traffic system, fix my water, it makes my hospitals have better capacity, improve the schooling of my community. Like those are not things everybody would agree, right? Like there would always be consensus.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that system as well? That system of, and it's a continuous system. It's not the laughable 4-year cycle or 5-year cycle, which is like a year of consolidating power, 2 years of fighting to get your policies through, 1 year of campaigning to retain power. Whereas, each month or like whenever it is quarterly, as citizens of those countries, you go into a system, you vote on policy, that policy's action, like you're continuously part of the improvement of the fabric of society. If you were to talk about democracy.
And that's why to me it's broken. Like there is consensus in the US between the left and the right. There is consensus in the UK between the left and the right. Like if you ask people, do they all want better education? Yes. Do they all want better healthcare? Yes. Do they want better roads? Yes. Do they want less taxes? Yes. There is fucking consensus across the board between left and right in every country in the fucking world.
Yeah.
What there is not consensus about is the ideology of the person that's drawing that policy up, which is irrelevant in the fucking conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And so, we sit here and we say, are you pro this or pro that? That's not the fucking question. Am I pro less taxes? Who's going to say no? No. Am I pro better healthcare?
No.
Am I pro, equal rights? Am I pro this and that? Yes. Well, generally, there is more consensus on those topics.
But on the tax thing, which is a great example, like I have consensus. I'm in favor of a tax system. Not in Dubai. No, I'm in favor of a tax system because I'm kidding. Because if I know that tax system where that money is being spent today, part of the reason you're not incentivized in the UK around a tax system is because the money is misspent on things that are irrelevant to what you personally believe. So you have no say in it, which is precisely your point. Like, would you pay more taxes if that money is to put towards a overhaul of education? Yes, because it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
they print.
We hyper-simplified everything, right? Like there's so many more policies and so many more things that play here. But generally speaking, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that the misconception that there is no consensus between parties is precisely a misconception. Like I do believe that if you have people vote on policies, purely policies, not the people behind the policies, that most of the time you will get alignment. Now there will be differences in opinion and stuff on certain policies that have to do with, sexual orientation, civil rights, or whatever. Those things might have issues because there are certain ideologies that influence those policies. And over time, if you remove that ideology perspective from politics, over time, I think those differences in opinion will kind of fizzle out.
Yeah.
So if you were tomorrow to implement some sort of decentralized government, system where everyone gets to vote on policies rather than people, at the beginning there might be more of a divide, but over time I think that would kind of fizzle away.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. To go back to the topic of like what happened in the U.S. over the last 5 days and how social media has kind of reacted to it, and is it good, is it bad? I'm a lot more pragmatic. I take a lot more rational approaches to everything. I hyper-simplify everything. And my conclusion is this is great because you dethroned a bad person. You've taken away his megaphone. You know what I mean? That reached like billions of people. The last 2 days the world has been calm.
Yeah, it's true.
He hasn't said anything online. The world is kind of normal. Like everyone's at peace. Like Saudi's at peace with Qatar. The UAE's at peace with Qatar. I just feel like once bad is out of the system, only good comes out.
Yeah,
for some reason. I don't know what it is. And then it's really like. It's really showing that there are flaws in our society and social media has too much power. And if they have the power to cancel people, then it reaffirms everyone's position that they're way too fucking powerful.
Yep.
And so they made a decision that they had no choice to do, or they did for money, or whatever the motivation is. But the truth is written in the stars, and we kind of see it that social media is bad for society. It needs to be regulated, and bad people should be dethroned and not given that power.
Yeah. See, I don't know how you. Yeah, I agree completely. I think there's a couple of things in it for me. How long it took social media to dethrone is exactly aiding the distrust that society will now have, right? Because Like we've seen it happen, and it's the profiteering. So that's good. That's good because it revealed the true motivations behind the companies, if you couldn't see it before. The second part to it is when it comes to regulation on social media. I mean, again, like this is where the lines get blurred for me. Like governments regulating, it's just how are they modern enough, intelligent enough in that space to be able to create regulations that don't just create more bureaucracy, that create more frustration and more restrictions on progress. Whereas, I mean, you can regulate, but that's where I think it's going to be really interesting to see how a decentralized future starts to impact on these different industries and different technologies. Because, yeah, sure, it's where do you start? Do you start with regulation on social, or do you start with decentralization at a decision maker level? Like, it's hard to know which one comes first.
Listen, I see governments as like parents. Right? That they're always, you're a teenager and you want to do a million things, and you try and you learn and you get exposed to different amazing things. And your parents are like from a different generation, and they get it, but they don't get it. And so they kind of always slow you down and annoy the shit out of you. Like, oh, I want to get this, or oh, I want to do that, or oh, I want to wear those jeans, or oh, I want to cut my, I don't know, I want to cut my hair a certain way, or I want to do the same thing. They're always like, yo, that's fucking no. And they're always kind of helping you mediate and, land in between. And that's the role governments should play. Like, they're there for the betterment of their society as a whole. Right? Like, I don't think anyone can argue about the benefit of decentralization. I don't think anyone, if you drill it down and you explain it to somebody, like what the benefits are of decentralization, like the fundamentals of how it was built and why it was built and how it functions, everyone can agree to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody, but the challenges are, and what governments are going to do is they're going to do it at a pace that the country or the organization or the society can sustain. In theory.
See, that's
whether
the theory.
That's their self-preservation, or whether that's, bottom line, whatever it is, a government is going to be like a parent. Like they're not always going to do what's best, in the interest of that one kid. They might have other siblings. They might have an aunt or an uncle. They might have an older kind of, annoying uncle who does a thing a certain way that they have to protect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have alliances and relationships with more people than just a kid.
Yeah. I think it's going to be tricky. I think it's going to be difficult because of the speed. Everything's moving so quickly now. And it's the thing about social media and technology, like the cat's out the bag. This thing isn't slowing down. So there's not really time for debate or thinking. Like, this is like, we're going to have to move quick, change.
Totally. And I think...
Otherwise, we repeat.
Yeah. And I think governments get that, right? I think everything that's shown us, everything that's happened thus far makes us believe that government realize that too. There's nothing you can do about
it. Yeah.
Like 3 years ago, no one would have imagined where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of the writing was on the wall on certain parts of it. Yeah. But how fast it happened? Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have ever imagined that. But
yeah.
The bottom line, listen, what happened in the US for me, fundamentally, is a turning point in society, global society, but it's absolutely the right thing that should happen.
So your position, shutting him off, right thing to do, should have happened, benefit the actual companies that shut him off, expose their flaws, like the final nail in the coffin for how they're currently set up today.
Yes.
Okay, I can be on board with that.
And another thing, fastest growing social media platform in 2020.
TikTok.
Yeah, most regulated social media platform of them all.
TikTok.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So who are we kidding?
Yeah, true. Why
does users around the world, why do we hold social media kind of companies at different standards? It's for our entertainment.
Careful what you wish for there, though.
Fine, but it's for our entertainment.
Yeah.
Right? It's entertainment. It's, and we've allowed it to get a hold of our society by the throat.
Yeah.
And that's not cool.
No. And yeah, It could be a lot worse. We could actually be in a lot worse place, right? If you think back to 2016, not that we'll go back to it, but where it all started, how all this like has manifested, like where we're at today. What do you do though? Do you pull the plug? Today, like they pulled the plug on one person, but that whole it's not like 70 million people aren't going to just sit and be quiet.
But here's the thing. I think pulling the plug on Trump is like giving a Tylenol to society. Like it's just like Trump is a symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
Like he's not the problem.
Yeah.
Right. Like the U.S. and the world, for the matter, by the way, is going through a crisis. There's a higher concentration of wealth than there's ever been in the history of humankind. There's more people suffering of like starvation and like just access to basic sanitary lifestyles. You know what I mean? So like the divide between rich and poor is the biggest it's ever been.
Yep.
And so it's starting to show its flaws. Like capitalism and our whole system is starting to get to a turning point as well. Like it's a tipping point, right? Like, but there's still 1 billion people in the world that don't have access to clean water. It's still a real thing.
Yeah. So it needs to evolve or break.
But fucking Elon Musk almost has $200 billion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right? Like why do people like Trump exist? Why? Because the rest of the world's fucking hurting. That's why he exists, right? He appeases a certain demographic. Now he's fucking milking the shit out of it, but like he's not the problem. The problem is society is broken and people are capitalizing on it.
Yep.
And if you're kind of smart and you know how to manipulate people, then these platforms give you power that you shouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, these platforms do it for you. Which is even scarier. Yeah. So a reset is coming.
I don't know about a reset. I think it's going to be a gradual thing. Like I don't think it's going to be like.
Yeah, we talk about a reset like a decade long. This decade surely has to shift.
It's weird, man. Like when they shut Trump off, I sighed of like relief. I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Because it was sure what was happening. It was clear what was going to happen.
Yeah, it was very obvious.
I was like, fuck, there goes the U.S.
Yeah. Which means there goes the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for me, it was like, oh shit! Like if this doesn't happen, like if there is no end to this, there's only one place this place goes.
Yeah.
There's only one place that this scenario can end, right?
Yeah.
And so this had to happen. I'm totally for it, and it puts into question many ethics and many things that I also I'm challenged with. Like I also think about freedom of speech and the impact it's going to have, the precedent that's setting.
Yeah.
It's super messed up.
Yeah. But no, I do agree with you. I think it's interesting to raise the conversations because these are the debates that are going to have to happen. The conversations of what comes next. Like where do you draw the line? How do you stop? Because there's like an emergency. It's like you can pull the emergency cord, but how frequently do you pull the emergency cord? All of these things. Like how do you censor? How far do you censor? Like freedom of speech. If freedom of speech is basically like you say, going to bring down it's going to be to the detriment of the globe.
Then no.
Completely. But then let's not elude ourselves that there's such a thing as freedom of speech. It's not. So is freedom of speech a good or a bad thing? Quite clearly, when you've got tools that can distribute communication to over 1 billion people, it's a bad thing. That's basically the position that society is going to have to take.
You could rephrase the meaning or the saying to freedom of truth. Like as long as you're always telling the truth.
I mean, we live in the least truthful society.
But that's what I'm saying, and that's the thing with me. Like freedom of speech as an idea, as a topic, as a thing exists under the assumption of truth, right? Of human rights, of like. So we have
a truth issue through and which is the disinformation that's been spread via these platforms.
And
we have
media is responsible.
Of course.
Right.
And the need to be fast means that traditional media has actually let down their guard and their ethics because they just it has to go out now because news spreads faster on Twitter than it does anywhere else.
Yeah.
So we have a disinformation issue. Like we have that freedom of speech issue. We have a censorship issue now. Like we have too much power sitting in corporations. So like now the problems are very clear.
100%.
What do we do in startup world when we have a load of problems? Fix them. We don't say we growth hack them.
Shut up. But anyways, I think I'm really interested to see what people have to say about what happened. I'm really interested to see if people have comments or questions.
Yeah.
I hope people don't just WhatsApp, because that's what they always do. They don't actually comment on the videos. They just WhatsApp me personally and say, I disagree with you, Chris, or...
They can't WhatsApp you now though, right? They have to go on Signal.
Yeah, they have to go on Signal now and message me. But like, I'm really curious to see what people think. I think what happened is good. I think you and me on the same page.
We're on the same page. I just think it's a dangerous course, and that's where my concern is. But at the same time, I do believe that there is a route. There are some tough decisions that have to be made. But if people think we're going back to what it was like before, like
no, the world is forever different.
Forever different.
Yeah, because of that.
And that's it. A lot changes.
But I think it's a good thing. Anyways,
let's hear your views. Cool.
It's our first episode of the year, and hopefully our guests will be ready to record, I guess, in a week or 10 days, whatever the quarantine period.
14 days.
It's a self-isolation.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome.
Good first episode, and hopefully people will comment and give us their feedback, and we'll record our investment debate.
Yeah.
Probably in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
That's it. Thank you.
See you.